Welcome, everyone, to the Lakeshore Chamber's first ever virtual chamber luncheon, direct to you from Hammond City Hall. We want to thank, first of all, our sponsor, Icon and Icorn, for sponsoring today's virtual luncheon. It's a first of a kind, so David, hold on. Originally, we scheduled this for a barbecue at the Dynasty, and in keeping with the governor's new changes for Lake County, we had to virtually move to historic City Hall. And Mayor Tom was gracious enough to participate in this, but this may be a new norm for us, so please bear with us as we get a little acclimated to this. If you spoke originally with Monique at the Lakeshore office, you'll be able to submit questions via Zoom after the presentation by the mayor, and we go through our question and Q&A at the very end. So why don't we get started? Today's guest is back for his 20th presentation to the Lakeshore Chamber. And without further ado, welcome Mayor McDermott.
Hey, Dave. Nice to see you. Bill, nice to see you also.
Mayor,
thanks for inviting me back, Dave.
It's great to have you back. We want to thank you for doing this. We thought it was, with what's going on with COVID-19, that this was going to be a very important presentation. And to let people know what's been going on, like, for example, the last 8 to 10 weeks, twice a week, you've been doing a webinar, or a Zoom meeting with your staff, with live Facebook, and many citizens who tuned into this.
Yeah.
And, could you give us an idea as to the impact the coronavirus has had on Hammond from a medical standpoint, a financial standpoint, and perhaps its impact on the immediate future of Hammond?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. Early on, when the virus first struck, we had a gathering in the lobby of Hammond City Hall, putting together the coronavirus task force. And looking back at that gathering and seeing the pictures of it, we criticize it now because we were all standing right next to each other. We were real proud, and we had a real big group, all real close to each other, announcing the coronavirus task force. And now we've been so trained over the last, 3 months,
right,
that we're not supposed to be close to each other, and we're not supposed to have large gatherings. And back then, we didn't even know what Zoom was, Dave. And now look at us, we're experts. I could actually change my background and be in front of the Golden Gate Bridge right now if you want, but I'll hold off on it. But nonetheless, we put together our task force, and we met starting on Mondays every week through the entire epidemic. We're still meeting on Mondays. We actually stepped up our meetings to twice a week. I don't even remember how long ago, for a couple months now. So we've been meeting twice a week. And I used to meet with the coronavirus task force, and then afterwards I'd come out and summarize what we did at the coronavirus task force meeting to the Hammond residents. And then we realized that it would be a lot easier if we just streamed it live. So we started that, I don't know, about a month ago. It's all blurred together. I don't remember dates very well, but about a month ago, we started live streaming. Maybe it was a little bit longer, and you actually could watch. They're all on my Facebook page or on Go Hammond's Facebook page, and you could actually watch every meeting we had all the way through this ordeal. We always update stats to the Hammond residents and to all the residents watching. And right now in the city of Hammond, we have 579 positive cases of COVID-19, which is a lot. We've had 16 fatalities, which is absolutely tragic. Indiana has 32,437 positive COVID-19 cases, and over 1,871 Hoosiers have died of this disease since it started. It's tragic what's gone on. I know that people are excited that the shelter-in-place orders gradually being lifted, and I feel like Debbie Downer, because I'm constantly just reminding people that it's still out there and we still need to protect ourselves. In fact, Hammond City Hall has been open this is our 3rd week open, and we're starting, to get more increases in positive cases amongst our employees, which is horrible as well. So it's still out there, and we're trying to balance life, having somewhat of a normal, economy and job market. At the same time, we're trying to be safe, and that's the balance that we're trying right now. And I hope we're successful, because I agree. I think that Governor Holcomb's done a good job in Indiana on this. I think that we're doing better than Illinois as far as our reopening. I don't think the right answer is to hide in our basements and shut down the economy and cause massive disruptions to our supply chains and to small businesses across Northwest Indiana. So I agree with Governor Holcomb that we need to try to balance safety versus having somewhat of a normal life.
What do you think from, I participated in those meetings quite a bit. I was on just, observing and listening to your staff, and like Dr. Frank, Karen Callahan, I think were very informative of keeping you up to date on what's happening in Hammond. What did we learn from that?
Well, you know what was important? First off, Dr. Frank, anytime you could talk to a doctor, and I would just ask questions that because I have questions like, doctor, when you're riding your bike, do you wear a mask? When you're out in public, do you, just talking to him about normal stuff that he's a doctor and we're not. So I think people just hearing Dr. Frank's interactions with me was helpful because I was trying to ask questions that average residents have, and to hear from a doctor via, Facebook Live is an amazing luxury to have. And I was very kind of Dr. Frank to participate in every meeting that he's done with us. And Karen Callahan, the same thing. She's she's the director of ER nurses at Franciscan Healthcare Center Hammond. She's been on every Zoom meeting with us as well. And she really made me feel comfortable that, and this is something I think it's important to remember, that when we were shutting down our economy, when we were clearing our calendars, when we were shutting down business, shutting down government, they were telling us to flatten the curve. That if we didn't flatten the curve, that we would overwhelm our healthcare facilities and people would die because doctors would have to make life and death choices about the limited resources they had, choosing who lives and who dies. And we flattened the curve. That's great, thankfully. We spread it out. The disease is still out there, but we didn't overload our facilities. And hearing from Karen, constantly she would tell us how many beds were available, how many respirators were available. It made me feel like, as a mayor, okay, we did our job, we flattened the curve, but now we still hear the people that say we still shouldn't be opening the economy. We should still be hiding in our houses. I think the people that say that are getting paid by their jobs, because the people that aren't getting paid, they want to go to work and they want to put food on the table. And that's the balance. And that's what's hard about this entire epidemic. And I understand what the governor's trying to do. I think we're doing it the right way in Indiana. It's not too fast, but it's not too slow. I think Illinois is way too slow. And I think Texas and other states are way too fast. I think in Indiana, it's like porridge and the Three Bears. It's just right.
Well, I think it was very encouraging when Karen and Dr. Frank would speak. They were right there. I mean, this was real time, but you were getting that information. Mm-hmm. She was a huge advocate of wash your hands. She said, if nothing else, wash your hands.
Yeah,
that's the best way to protect yourself.
We're all experts now. And I've been to China, I've been to Asian countries, and when I go there, even way before the pandemic, you would see people wearing masks everywhere in public. And it's no surprise to me that the Asian countries are doing better at containing the spread of this disease because of that simple fact that when they're in public, they're wearing masks in public to prevent. It's just ingrained in our culture. I have a feeling in America, we're going to start to see more and more of this, of course, until we get a vaccine. But even after we get a vaccine, that's the kind of thing that may linger around.
And I think furthermore, with your meetings to hear from the police captain and also from Kevin Margraf, they were speaking about, we've had 2 weeks now without an incident, of a coronavirus, positive. Mm-hmm. That was encouraging, I think, to your staff as well as the people on Facebook.
Yeah, that might have changed since the last report, but
that's true. With more testing and so forth,
people are a lot better about not taking emergency services. Yep. I stayed a couple nights with the Hammond Fire Department early in my term as mayor, and I was shocked that when we would get called out, I'd be on an ambulance, and we'd get called out, and it would be like, lady's having an asthma attack. She needs a ride to the hospital. And as a mayor, I was like, what? Like, they called the ambulance? And she literally, this call I went on, it was like 4 a.m. The lady lived a mile and a half from the hospital in downtown Hammond. And instead of getting to the hospital herself, which was possible, they called an ambulance for a pickup. And that shocked me as a mayor. I never really thought that was something that the firemen had to put up with, but it is. And what we've seen since this epidemic started is only emergencies are calling for ambulances now. And we're doing triage at the front doorstep saying, asking them a couple questions. If it's obviously a life and death situation, they're going to grab the person and get them to the hospital. But sometimes we sort of negotiate with them at the doorstep saying, we could take you to the hospital. And if you get there, they're not going to do anything with you. They're just going to send you home. So a lot of times It's sort of doorstep diplomacy that the Hammond Fire Department's doing. So,
What about the financial impact on your city? Uh, for example, the casinos. Any idea when the casinos might open?
June 15th, I believe, is the day. It's mid-June. It's in the governor's reopening plan. I would hope that we'd go earlier than that. And then there's this whole 1 week lag that everybody's sort of unclear if the 1 week lag still applies in stage 4 as it did in stage 1 to 2. So I'm hoping that, we're all adults, Dave. And if people want to gamble in Hammond, I imagine they should probably wear the proper PPE. And obviously Horseshoe Casino is getting ready for the new world in Horseshoe when they do open up. But I think we should open up sooner rather than later. Personally, I got 2,000 layoff warn notices from Horseshoe Casino. All the employees are not getting paid right now.
No.
It's 2,000 people that live in our region that rely on those paychecks, and they're gone. And health benefits are shortly behind. In the middle of a pandemic, that's just 2,000 people right there. And that's just one of the companies I got warn notices from. So the economy's wrecked in the region. If 100 people got laid off, maybe 30 or 40 are being called back to work, and that's unacceptable. The city of Hammond's budget's destroyed for 2020. We anticipate a lot of things when we do budgets, just like everybody does. We anticipate we're going to get X amount of property tax revenue. We anticipate that we're going to get X amount of miscellaneous revenue, because we do. The Sportsplex alone probably makes $500,000 in miscellaneous revenue a year, and it's just gone. All of the revenue's gone, and the only thing left in our budget is expenses, and it's something we're trying to deal with. And the council and the mayor, it seems like we're all on the same page right now, that we're just trying to weather the storm, and we're trying not to have massive layoffs, and we're just sort of hunkering down and just focusing on trying to get through this year without massive layoffs. And there's not going to be a lot of construction projects happening this summer, unfortunately, but we're hoping that we can get through the year without resorting to layoffs and furloughs and things of that nature.
Well, speaking of the economy, the Small Business Administration has a program out, and they've had it out for several months now, a couple months now. It's called the Payroll Protection Program. Mm-hmm. And this is for small and medium-sized businesses under 500 people, under 500 employees. And they have actually literally given a couple $1 trillion towards this program. And what I wanted to emphasize from the chamber standpoint to our business listeners and so forth, how important it is. There's still money available, and to talk to your local bankers. If you've been turned down before, or if you have not applied for these funds, it can sustain you. It could definitely sustain you for a couple of months. Additionally, they had the SBA has a refinance program, a refinance loan program that has an interest rate of 2.7% for 25 years. Plus, 6 months are forgiven if you sign up by September 27th. Forgiven. Mm-hmm. And this is a huge deal for a small business. And we hope that, we're just making it aware. We've done this several times with our members, but just to contact your banker if that's something that would appeal to you.
Hey, Dave, could I have Phil come on real quick and talk a little bit about a program that we're offering for Hammond businesses?
Absolutely.
To help them. Yeah. And Phil, could you talk a little bit about the program we announced last week regarding Hammond businesses and money that they could receive to help them weather the virus?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mayor Tom. Thanks, Dave. Just like a lot of other communities, Hammond received additional federal funding that could only be used for COVID-related activities. And, Mayor Tom very quickly told our team to get together and come up with something that can help the small businesses that are really struggling right now, because he's hearing from them all the time, obviously. So we came up with the Small Business Resiliency Program. We kept it very simple. We basically are offering up to $10,000 per grant to a small business. They have to have 50 employees or less. They basically have to show us or prove to us that they've lost money through the COVID pandemic, which obviously is not going to be difficult for most businesses out there. And they could do that through a profit and loss statement, which we will work with them on if they've never done one before. And as long as they could prove that to us, we basically will give them up to $10,000, depending how much they lost. And as long as they stay open for a year after receiving the money, they do not have to pay it back. And I know from talking to a lot of small businesses out there, this is relief that is desperately needed. And they're very excited that we put this together and are offering it.
Great.
Thanks, Phil.
You're welcome.
You say it's 10,000, Phil?
It's up to 10,000. Now, if they do a profit and loss statement and it shows they lost only $5,000, then obviously that's
Okay.
what their grant would be.
Wow, that's great.
We imagine it'll be at least 10,000 in almost every case. So, I mean, think about it. If you're a beauty salon, you were shut down from mid-March until last week. I mean, it's just, yeah.
Mayor, I think we have also Africa and Ann are available through your economic development, if you'd care to bring something up to them right now.
Well, let's just go ahead and bounce on to the next topic if you don't mind, Dave.
Okay, that's great.
That's for more information on that. I think Phil did a good job. And for more information, the city website's gohammond.com,
Perfect.
www.gohammond.com. And I love Africa and I love Ann. They're both great. And Africa's my appointee on the Regional Development Authority. She's a great department head for the city of Hammond. She runs Planning and Development Department. And Ann is the head of Economic Development. She does a wonderful job in that regards. And so I have a great team of women, helping lead Hammond's economic development.
Great.
So, and I get to brag about bringing in $900 million in economic development, but over the years, I've had great people running that department, Phil Taylor included, by the way. So
Great.
I get a lot of the glory for all the business we bring in, but it's an amazing team of people behind me. That's why, I'm very lucky as the mayor.
Well, here's some glory you did not get on last Saturday when the storm hit.
Glory and gloom.
But obviously no fault of your own. And but in conjunction with that, your team, the same team, has come up with a great program, kind of a storm relief program.
Yeah. So last Saturday, we had, I think it was the 23rd, if I remember, but we had in Hammond, which is funny because my stepmother, Lynette, that lives in Dyer, they didn't even get a drop of rain. But in Hammond, the way this storm cut across our city, it literally hit every part of our city from north to south, and it cut across, and it was just a heavy rain cell. It dropped in the first 15 minutes it came across our city. It dropped 1.81 inches of rain, and across the entire city, that's 1.8 billion gallons of water. And then over the course of the next 45 minutes, we got another 1.2 inches of rain. For 3 inches of rain in 1 hour, after already soaking rains from the week before, it was devastating. We got 3 billion gallons of water in an hour. Our plant is rated for 70 million gallons a day. So we immediately started filling our catch basin, which is only 50 some million gallons. It filled up like that. And then we just started overflowing the plant as much as we could, which is a reportable violation with the Environmental Protection Agency. But we'd rather report a violation to the EPA than back up, water into everybody's basements. But still trying to bypass the plant, dumping straight into the river, filling up our catch basin, running our plant way above its capacity. We were quickly overloaded with water. It just came too fast, too hard all at once. It would be like taking 5-gallon barrels of water and dumping it in your sink all at once. If you dump all of that in your sink all at once, a small part of it will get treated and go down the drain, but the rest of it will just flow over. And that's what happened to our system. And I was in City Hall when the storm hit on a Saturday. It was 3 in the afternoon-ish. And when the storm hit, I knew sitting there, I was in trouble. I knew that we were going to flood. I immediately got in my car and I went to Schleicher, which is the 4th district. And it was unbelievable to me how high the water level on the streets were throughout the entire neighborhood. And I was driving through just surveying the damage, and it was massive already. And the rain was still coming, but the shocking thing to me was the cars that were driving through the neighborhood were splashing waves into the houses. So I called 911, I think 2 or 3 times that night. That was the first time I called 911. I asked for police backup, and the police officers got there, and we worked together to block all outside traffic from driving through that neighborhood, which was all we could do until the system caught up. And after about an hour and a half of blocking all the traffic from going through Schleicher, the levels started dropping. And then I got a phone call that we lost a police car in the 7400 block of Alabama to high water. So I went over there and I performed the same functions. Ended up calling 911 over there again on another matter. I worked basically until 9 or 10 o'clock that night. Saw massive devastation to a lot of Hammond homes.
Well, along those lines, let's say that I had damage to my basement, water heater or things of that nature. Is this new program something that would answer that, or?
Thank you. You know, there's a couple programs being offered. I know the township trustee is offering a voucher for cleaning supplies, which is very nice, and we appreciate that. And if you need these supplies, please contact the township trustee in their office in Wicker Park or in Hammond, and they do have a voucher, I think, where you can get cleaning supplies. I think it's like $30 worth of cleaning supplies, and we appreciate the help. We're also offering through the city a program through the Hammond Sanitary District that will reimburse homes that were damaged by the flood events on Saturday night. And if you have to have your home inspected just for damage, so our the men and women that work for the inspections department or the sanitary department will come into your home, into your basement, verify that you experienced damage. And if you did, we'll put you down on a list and you'll get a $500 voucher from the city to help you with your damages. And we realize most people are going to have damages way in excess of $500, but we thought it was a kind gesture coming from the city's sanitary district. We're not liable legally. It was an act of God. It just, no system's going to handle that flow of water. It's just something that we wanted to do. It's going to cost us $150,000 ish to run this program, but we just felt that it was the best thing we could do to help these hundreds of Hammond's families that lost their basements.
And how does a person apply for that?
Phil, do you have that info on you by chance?
I do. If they want to apply, the application will be up tomorrow on gohammond.com. And what it's going to do is going to have you call the sanitary district. And then they're going to immediately schedule the inspection. Once the inspection is complete, your name and telephone number will be given to our community development department. They will reach out to you, ask you a series of questions. And then as long as everything checks out, that's when you'll be able to get a check. The number that, Mayor, if you're asking for the number, it's 219-853-6413, and the extension is 515. But again, that doesn't start until tomorrow.
Thanks, Phil. I've been asked a couple questions about this already. Mayor, do renters apply? Can renters get this damage waiver from the city? And this is for homeowners, for homestead exemptions only. We realize that renters experience damage as well. You have a business relationship with your landlord, and hopefully between renters insurance and this business relationship with your landlord, you can find relief that way. But I can tell you that for homeowners, everybody that can be verified will get a $500 voucher. B, I was also asked, what about businesses that experience damage, Mayor? Are you going to reimburse them? And I'd like to point out that the program we just spoke about with regard to COVID-19 losses can be used for any reason. I think that's a very fair voucher system for the businesses. It was $10,000 for COVID-19 losses. You could use a portion of that if you experience damage because of the floods as well for a business. So this program for the flood damage is for Hammond homeowners only. So,
and those are two great programs, really, to give support to people in need right now.
Well, it's sort of like the federal government right now with their stimulus that they passed, the 2 rounds of stimulus they passed already. It's your government during times of crisis needs to do what it can. And even though the federal government only gave, qualified people 1 check, it was still appreciated by the people that received the check. That's like the $500 payment from us. I know people that lost $10,000 worth of, materials in their basement, and we give them a $500 check. It doesn't make them whole, but we care. And I know it's just a horrible thing. I've lost my basement a few years back, and it's not fun.
Well, it's something you're offering. It's something they can take advantage of. Let me switch gears a little bit. I had a question written in from Jeff Williams, who's our board chairman of the Lakeshore Chamber. Jeff's a big he's a music fan and everything. You want to know about Festival of the Lakes and forget the Symphony at Wolf Lake. What's going to happen with those?
Festival of the Lakes is canceled this year, Dave. This is the first time I've mentioned it publicly. We can't, we talked early about the budget problems that we're experiencing in the city, not just city Hammond, by the way. This is a nationwide problem with municipal government, with county government, with state government. Everybody's broke because their budgets were destroyed from the epidemic. And knowing the challenges that we have this year, going into a festival that, we go into a festival expecting to break even. And if I can't break even, and I know I have no chance to break even, I cannot justify having a big 5-day festival knowing the problems we have in our budget this year. It would be irresponsible. So we're in the process right now of working with our lineups, seeing if we could get them to agree to come back in 2021 and fulfill their obligation to the city of Hammond in 21 instead of 20. Hopefully I won't be mayor in 2021. Maybe I'll be in Washington, D.C., but if not, then we'll hold the fest next year. But in 2020, we cannot have the fest and still break even with social distancing requirements. And people are scared right now. You know,
Sure.
I think it's going to be a long time before we go to a concert.
Well, there's a lot of uncertainty. You know, nobody knows that for sure. Evidenced by, you know, the governor's changing, you know, dates on us and so forth. Those things are going to happen. We're going to have to be flexible and be able to act quickly. I assume 4th of July parade, is that something else that's in or out, or?
My 4th of July is spent in Whiting usually. I've always freeloaded off
Mayor
Mayor Joe. Mayor Joe puts on a good party, so we just ride along for the ride with Mayor Joe, and I usually attend 4th of July with Mayor Joe at the Whiting 4th of July parade, which was canceled about a month ago. And then usually 4th of July evening, I stopped shooting off fireworks because I think they're too dangerous. I stopped about 5 years ago. Now I go to Wolf Lake and watch the fireworks, and we're still talking about maybe trying to do some type of firework display and respecting social distancing because it is the 4th of July.
Huh.
We're still talking about that. But as far as the symphony at the park, if we could, we might be able to pull that off, Dave. I haven't heard one word on that, yes or no, but as long as we could respect social distancing, we could have events like that. And the symphony at the park would bring out 1,000 people, but we got room out there for 15,000 people.
Right,
so
exactly.
maybe we could do something like that if we spread each other out, but I can't have Snoop come to Hammond and play a concert in front of 15,000 people without violating social distancing. Right. And I don't want the fest to be a super spreader. So.
Well, let me ask you, there are a number of things here as far as city services reopening with the governor's program, his 5-step program. What about the Sportsplex and the Civic Center?
That's next week. We first off, you know, I indicated earlier that I thought Governor Holcomb's phased reopening was very smart, and after I read it, I said I want on board. We have the right as mayors to be more restrictive, and some of my colleagues have been more restrictive. I know Mayor Gary, for instance, and obviously Gary's more hot, you know, infection-wise than Hammond right now, but in Gary, they're still in the beginning of stage 2, and we're getting ready to move to stage 3 in Hammond. So when the governor came out with this phased reopening, we signed right on, and I'm waiting every chance we get to move into the next phase. So right now we're sort of in phase 2.5, which is City Hall's open right now. Gathering limits are 25 max. You could travel for any reason. It doesn't have to be essential anymore. Religious services are taking place in Hammond. First Baptist Church is having services as we speak. I went to church in Gary last Sunday. So church services have started. Retailers like liquor stores, clothing stores, furniture stores, jewelry stores are at 50% capacity. Restaurants, barbershops, salons, tattoo shops, 50% capacity. And still closed is bars, nightclubs, gyms, community centers, playgrounds, tennis courts, basketball courts, sports venues, casinos, movie theaters, pools, schools, and universities. Still closed.
So the splash parks and the parks will be closed until next
week.
Next week.
June 1st. Capacity limits go up in Lake County unless your mayor holds you back another week, which it does occur. Not in Hammond, by the way. Capacity limits go up to 100 from 25 next week. Retail and shopping goes up to 75% next week. Gyms and fitness centers can reopen next week, which includes the Sportsplex and the Shepherd Center and the Civic Center. Community pools can reopen. We don't have any right now in Hammond. So next week, even after we do this, first off, if you're 65 and over, you're recommended to stay home still. Social distancing is still required. Masks in public recommended. Still closed. Movie theaters, playgrounds, bars and nightclubs, cultural entertainment, sports venues, elementary and high school buildings. So Monday we roll into stage 3 in Hammond and most of Lake County. Some places may move slower, but in Hammond we're moving into stage 3 as soon as we can.
well, it's going to be great to get some of our businesses back active. You know,
I agree with you, Dave.
it's tough on small business, big time.
I agree with you, Dave.
Um, how about a little economic development talk as while we're talking
Sure.
about it? The new digital Crossroads data center. Will it open? Is it this year? It's slated for with Mr. Dockage.
Good. Could I have Ann unmute also so she can help me out? Ann or Africa, whoever wants to help me on this. I can tell you that I had a tour of the digital data center about a month ago. It was cold out still. So maybe it was longer than that. But they took me through and showed me they'd made great progress. They're still working. They worked all the way through the shutdown there. It seemed like it was going really well. I'm sure Ann's been out there since I have. So
Yep.
I see Ann on the screen. How you doing, Ann?
I'm good. How are you doing, Mayor? Hello,
Could you
Mr.
help me
Ryan.
out with the data center question that Dave gave to me?
Yep, they are moving forward. Actually, this year was the year that they were going to have their flagpole ceremony for us all and open up the data center. But due to the pandemic, things have just been slowed down for now. And as soon as the different stages go through to stage 3, stage 4, we'll get back on track with them and start that ceremony as well. But for now, they wanted to just slow it down and not have large crowds out there. But they're on board. They're good.
So they're moving.
Is the flagpole a reality, Ann?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They've been working very hard on it.
Dave, you know how that happened?
I remember you talking about it.
So we were all there. I think you were in the same group. It was the governor was there. I was there. Tom Dockich was there. I know Phil and you were there. And the governor and I were talking, and I kept saying, you know, this is such a landmark. People are going to see this as soon as they come over the bridge from Chicago. I said, we should have some big Indiana flag here. And the governor's like, that's a great idea, Mayor. And we were both like, we had a meeting of the minds talking about law school stuff. Our meeting of the minds occurred, and Tom Dockich is just standing there. We're like, hey, Tom, why don't we get the biggest flag in the state of Indiana and put it right here so that when you're coming over that bridge from Illinois, it's the first thing you see. And so we're going to have the biggest Indiana state flag at that location. And I think it's proven to be just as difficult as building a data center for Tom Dockich. This flagpole has been, you know, it's like a thorn in his side since it started. So, but it's going to be a massive flagpole. Once it's up, the Hammond Port Authority is going to be responsible for the flags and making sure they're lowered and raised. But I'm looking forward. I like landmarks, and that's going to be a wonderful landmark. And
Will be.
I appreciate the governor for helping me get that done. And of course, Tom Dockich, love that guy. He's amazing. He believed in our city. He brought a great project that was supposed to go to downtown Chicago, and he put it in Northwest Indiana, and he put it in the city I'm responsible for. So I'm always a fan of Tom Dockich.
It's a great project too. It's really coming along.
Thank you.
You hired a gentleman named Jeff Speck, noted planner and urban designer from Boston, or the Boston area, and his new plans for downtown. Could you give us a status of where that's at right now?
Well, that definitely got slowed down from the epidemic, you know, and one of the biggest cheerleaders for Jeff Speck, and one of the reasons Jeff Speck came to Hammond was the young lady that was just speaking to us a second ago, Ann Anderson. She had, you know, Jeff and her became friends during this process, and during the shelter in place, you know, Ann was sheltered at home, working from home, but that project slowed down. Not that it's going anywhere though. This is something we're committed to for downtown Hammond. And, you know, we're already starting to implement portions of Jeff Speck's vision, but that is our vision for downtown Hammond. I think it's a good vision. I think it's realistic, and I know that we're committed to it, the administration. So
Great. How about the Ice Cube, the new ice arena? Where do we kind of hit on tough timing?
Real tough timing. And I imagine they'll be the recipient of one of our, the government grants that we're giving out, because they literally just barely opened when the COVID epidemic hit. But Phil, I know is real close to Frank out there. Phil, could you give me an update on Ice Cube?
Absolutely. Yeah, I talked to Frank Buck probably once a week. They were hit, you know, for a business that just opened, to have COVID hit obviously is probably worst case scenario. Unfortunately, they had to remove the ice that they had already built, the rink that was already up, because they just couldn't afford to cover utility costs to keep it ice when you're not bringing in any revenue. So I believe they are now putting the ice back in for the one rink. I think next week they're eligible to open, because we have the the change where you can have 100 people in one place. They obviously won't be hosting games or events probably for quite a while. However, they are going to start renting to hockey teams again, and there will be practices and probably smaller gatherings like that that'll start happening. So they are getting back up and running. The one, I guess, positive here is they weren't completed inside. All the construction wasn't done. And through this COVID issue, they have continued with construction inside the facility. So the next time any of us go back inside there, it's going to look even more beautiful than it did the first time around.
Great. Well, I know Chancellor Keon's big on the hockey, and I think Purdue start a hockey club, I believe.
They did. Yeah, they did. I know that Purdue Northwest is undergoing a lot of pain right now from the epidemic as well. I know that the athletic department took a lot of cuts because they're really worried about the enrollment next year. So I hope that they're still committed to the program like they were before the epidemic. But that's another, business in Hammond that was dramatically affected by the epidemic was Purdue Northwest, and it's one of Hammond's largest employers.
Right. How about a positive statement, Phil, on the new housing on New York Avenue?
The housing in New York is still moving forward. There's 14 paired townhomes and 6 ranch style lots that were available at one time. I know one of the 6 houses is, I think, completed at this point, and somebody has moved in. The other 5 are in design phase, but the 14 paired townhomes have gone well beyond expectations. I believe majority of them, if not all of them, are under construction at this point, and they do have tenants, or I should say purchasers of each of the townhomes. So it's been definitely been a success story. I think it just goes to show that Hammond has a need or a demand for new housing, and when we do, have the money to get a project like that started, it's going to be bought and very quickly.
Just out of curiosity, and I forgot to mention this, Nico at the golf course, Lost Marsh Golf Course, we were out there the other day and it was open. I was surprised at how many cars were there. And Nico said, and a lot of them were from Illinois. It was amazing how many Illinois plates were there.
Can you imagine if we open our casino? How many people from Illinois? I mean, that's one thing. As long as we're opening, why are we holding the casino industry back? Because if we open the boats, it'll be the only casino open, I don't know, in the Chicagoland area. It'll be the only, but right now there's question about whether or not we're allowed to be open even in, mid-June. So I would rather see that go sooner personally and get the people back to work and start fixing our budget problems in Northwest Indiana and the state budget problems too, which are massive. I mean, it's good for everybody,
I agree. You have 2 big projects kind of dovetail together. Phil and the mayor worked and his economic development team worked on Lear seating. They were prepared to move from the city, and you guys came up with a miraculous location, and then filled the building where they were. Tell us about that.
Well, when Lear made it clear to us that they were outgrowing their old facility on 165th, and they were going to start a process to look for their new location, obviously we were scrambling in Hammond. And this was from the announcement when they told us they were looking before we finally closed the deal with them. It was a long time. I want to say a couple of years. Phil, do you remember it being that long?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a couple of years.
It was a torturous process where we went through a stage where we pitched them a few pieces of property and they were too small. And then what they were looking for was, I want to say 15 acres or something like that. But we don't have that type of property in many places in the city of Hammond. We're landlocked in a lot of respects. So I went through a process for about a year thinking I was going to have to explain to Hammond residents that we lost Lear, that they outgrew their plant. And not only are we losing Lear, and I think at the time it was like 400 and something jobs, we also needed to fill the building they were going to be leaving. So as it turns out, we ended up making a miraculous save and put Lear on a very underutilized piece of property we had just to the south of the East Chicago South Shore Station, right there on Michigan. We made the save by getting Lear to locate there. They consolidated all their jobs in Northwest Indiana under one roof. They had jobs in Portage. and they consolidated all the jobs under one roof. There's like 900 employees working at this location now. It was a $40 million deal. Hammond participated financially to help secure that. And then the wonderful part about this whole deal is, so after Lear leaves their facility on 165th and moves into their new facility, we had already filled the old facility on 165th with Midland Metals, which is a company out of Chicago. It's been around for like 100 years. And they came in, they're a great family-owned corporation. They fit very well. They love their new building. So we got a double home run off of that. We got to keep Lear. We got to consolidate all of our operations under one roof. We got a huge new investment, and then we got to fill the old building as well. So that turned out well.
And that's as important to fill the old site as it is to build the new one. When you
Absolutely.
get something dovetail like that, is perfect.
Yep.
Congressman Viskolowski has worked many, many years on the Westlake Corridor. And
Yep.
Could you give us a status of where the Westlake Corridor stands now? I went by the South Shore the other day and there was 20 cars in the lot on Friday.
Yeah,
which is really disheartening.
it is. But I think that hopefully in time, South Shore, I mean, really, really hopefully in time, the South Shore ridership gets back to what normal levels were. Obviously, I think once we get a vaccine, our lives will start looking like they did in 2019. But until then, it's going to be affected across the board. But the Westlake expansion by all indications is 100% on. I mean, I know that I still think they have to make one final clearance through the federal government, but the South Shore is acquiring properties. They're building out their line. There's plans that are being made. I mean, by all indications, that project's a go. Africa, could you unmute and give me the perspective from the Regional Development Authority, if you don't mind? And then the Westlake, the double tracking between Gary and Michigan City appears like it's a go also. And that one's vital for Gary. That's vital for Michigan City. And quite frankly, it's very embarrassing that we've operated the South Shore line for over 100 years. And we had a whole stretch between Michigan City and Gary that was operating on one line, which is preposterous to me, but hey, we're fixing it. So Africa, could you shed a little light on what your perspective is on the Westlake and the double tracking from the Regional Development Authority standpoint?
Sure, Mayor. One of the things that I think is important for us to realize is even through this process, we had to continuously move the project forward. So with the property acquisition, we had to just continuously move the process. As it stands right now, we're going through the engineering phase. So the project is moving forward. We're just waiting on the full funding grant agreement for the Westlake Corridor. So we're really excited about it. For all intentions and purposes, it is going forward. We meet regularly about it, and there hasn't been a hiccup or anything, especially in light of COVID-19. We were meeting more often, talking to them, seeing if it affected it one way or the other, but it didn't appear to have a negative effect. So it appears that everything is on track.
It's great, so to speak.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, what about, there was an article in the paper today at the Times about, they were talking about, county attorney was Scott McClure was talking about employees being tested for COVID-19. They had like 700 to 800 employees tested, only 4 were positive. How has that been? Is your employees base been tested or in the process, or how does that work?
We don't really have widespread access to tests, Dave. I mean,
That's what I was curious.
My wife was tested one time about 2 or 3 weeks ago as a judge. I've never been tested as a mayor. Of course, I had never shown symptoms, but I know we've had, I think, 2 Hammond police officers that tested positive and since have returned to work, 2 Hammond firefighters that have tested positive and since returned to work. And I think right now we have 2 Hammond City employees that are positive and they're quarantining. But testing, despite what I hear from the White House, is still very hard to come by. In fact, while we're talking about testing, I know that in Hammond, Miller School was just announced. I think the Lake County Health Department is running a COVID-19 drive-through testing clinic at Miller School, which is in the Hessville section of Hammond, 6530 New Hampshire Avenue, on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. This week, Thursday the 28th, Friday the 29th, Saturday the 30th, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So you have drive-through testing coming to Hammond, but you know, as far as employees go, we take temperature checks when we come in. Employees know if they're feeling sick to stay home.
Okay.
But we're trying to balance, Dave. It's not easy.
Speaking of Miller, Scott Miller is the new superintendent of the Hammond School.
Mhm.
And had a question come in, on Zoom from someone asking when the new school will be ready to be open.
I think the plan all along was for the new high school, Hammond Central, the Hammond Central Wolves, to be open in the middle of next school year. And I haven't heard any different, Dave. And I could tell you during the depths of the shelter in place, I would look over and I'd see people working at all times. And I look over now and I can't even see them working because it's enclosed completely right now. I mean, they're working on the inside. So I imagine that school's still going fine as far as when it's going to open. I haven't heard otherwise. And Scott Miller, I think that is a really great hire that the school city of Hammond made.
I agree.
I'm a fan. I believe in him. He's the kind of person that puts his money where his mouth is. And if you want to talk about a guy that ingratiates himself well into the community, once he got offered this job, he moved his family to Hammond, Indiana, which I think shows tremendous leadership. And I'm just a fan. I think the school city made a great decision when they hired Scott Miller.
He called me when he bought his house. He was real excited about it.
He texted me too. And I said, get registered to vote quick.
And Mayor and Dave, I could say since Scott Miller has taken over, the communication between Civil City and School City has increased probably fourfold. I mean, we probably meet once a month. We're constantly talking about different things going on throughout the city. So it's been an all around a good experience since Scott Miller took that position.
I think Scott is on the line on the Zoom. Can we talk?
Oh, nice.
Can we talk to Scott?
Hey, Scott.
Hello, Scott. There he is.
He may not have been prepared for video. Oh, he is.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, everybody.
I was talking nice about you. I don't know if you heard that.
I did. I'm gonna have to clip that out for sure. In regards to the question, the high school is on schedule for a fall 21 opening. And thank you. Yes, the board did approve Hammond Central Wolves as the new name. So we're very excited with that. And moving forward, everything is on schedule.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the great job you're doing, Scott. Helps me a lot as mayor.
My pleasure.
School looks
Thank you.
awesome. When would the old high school come down, Scott?
So the students are still going to be there through next school year. So pretty much they will immediately be ready to bring it down once school is out next year.
Okay.
So that does mean the front parking lot may not be 100% ready for day one, but it's depending on, how that process goes, but relatively close. Yep.
Good. Well, we can see it
Thanks,
out the window at City Hall. It's beautiful.
It is.
Oh, we'll wait till we open it up. It'll even be more grand.
Great.
Thanks, Scott. Good to see you.
Thanks, Scott.
You too.
Mayor, that's about all I've got.
Really?
Anything, any questions from the Zoom audience we have?
That's good.
Oh,
We
I
have a
do
lot
have,
of-
I do have one from Zoom, Mayor.
Okay.
Talk about the water sales to Illinois. Is that still happening and affecting college bound and so forth?
Oh, we sell water to Illinois massively. Hammond's the biggest customer of the Hammond Water Department. If I remember correctly, the city of Hammond is about 50% of the total water sales, and most of the rest, I think Indiana is 50% of the water sales, and most of the rest we're selling in Illinois. Chicago Heights is our partner in water sales in Illinois. They do a good job selling to their surrounding communities. Lansing buys water from Hammond Water Company. Calumet City buys water from Hammond Water Company. And we're in the process of trying to finalize a deal with Homewood and Flossmoor so that they become new customers for us in Illinois. And the good thing about linking those two communities is it gets us to Olympia Fields, and hopefully there'll be a customer down the road as well. So we're always looking to expand our footprint in Illinois because we make really good money selling water over there, and it helps fund the college bound program. And so that's important. It's one day water revenue will be more than casino revenue in the city of Hammond. That's how important that is.
Huge asset.
Mhm.
That's the greatest move, I think.
I do too.
Yeah, I do too. How about a word for our frontline people like our doctors and nurses and going, watching your webinars and Karen Callahan as to how, and Dr. Frank, how passionate they were about taking care of, just taking care of business and all the tragedy that's been around them.
The nurses, the doctors, the firemen, the policemen, they're heroes. But there's one other group that is a hero to me as mayor and watching us get stuff done. There was literally police, fire, and the public works workers were on the front line. Everybody else was sort of sheltered, but these individuals that work for police, for fire, and for public works are literally on the front line. And if they weren't doing their job in public works, we wouldn't have been able to pick up people's garbage. And during the shutdown, the amount of garbage was staggering because everybody started cleaning their garage, and I started throwing everything away. And so, I know for a fact I've always appreciated public works, but I have a whole new appreciation for the men and women that work in public works after what we just went through, because they were out there in their PPE, and who knows what if they're exposing themselves or not. But yeah, nurses, doctors, fire, police, and public works employees helped us get through this epidemic in Hammond, and I want to say thank you to them. And I'm gonna always remember that.
And to Johnny and his team, right?
Gary Gleason's department head, Johnny Perez,
Right.
and yeah, they have a team of, I think it's 140 employees that they're responsible for all the roads in the city, all the parks in the city, the garbage collection in the city, and we monitor the alleys basically. So
I had a Zoom question just come in from Cal Bellamy. Cal wanted to know about the new hospital, ER hospital next to Cabela's.
good question. I drive by that on my bike. It looks done. I imagine there's probably some work on the inside. Phil, do you know anything about this?
I mean, it's a small outpatient surgery center.
But
that
8-bed, if I remember correctly.
I want to say it's somewhere between 15 or 17, somewhere around there, Mayor.
Okay.
But it's relatively small. I know at one point they were even talking to Franciscan about partnering because they can only handle limited amounts of medical procedures. So, but yeah, it's obviously been one of those construction projects that just continues, and the building itself looks great.
It does look great.
Mayor, we're in the home stretch here. And I did have one thing I wanted to say was it pays to buy local. I don't know if that's showing backwards or not.
No, I could read it.
Support your local merchants, restaurants, anybody retail out there. This has been a very hard time on small business, and they're struggling right now.
One thing I learned during this is, and one thing I think is definitely going to stick is, I never used to order online for food before the pandemic. Never. Like, I would wait in line. I'd go to Chipotle and I'd watch people passing up the line and grabbing their food. And I was always like, oh, I'm doing it the old fashioned way. I tell you now, it's like, I don't even see how, like, if you're House of Pizza or if you're Shoop's or if you're a small business, I don't see how. I think we need to learn from the pandemic and get apps. Even if you're El Taco Real, get an El Taco Real app on my iPhone, so that if I want to order and pick up food real quick, I think that is a way to make so much revenue for these small businesses around the city of Hammond. I think that's one of the things from the pandemic that's going to stick when this is all done, is ordering on your phone is so easy. I do it almost every day now, and I never did it once before the pandemic struck. So I know there's a lot of restaurant owners and a lot of business owners watching. I would try to figure out how to get your business on my iPhone so that even somebody that's not tech savvy like me could order your food and then just swing by and pick it up. I think things like that are key right now.
Well, think of how this has sustained some of the small businesses. Even look at Teebles. You drive by Teebles and all they have is drive-through, and they line them up by hour. By the hour, you could pick food up, or Taco Real, or what have you. But it helped. It was a culture change, and it's the new norm. That's what we're looking at right now, just as we try and figure out how we sustain business and even grow this business. But Mayor and Phil, we want to.
I could tell you in Hammond, though, Dave, we're going to be on the leading edge of opening this city back up. I'm going to open it up every stage as early as I possibly can. It's legal under the governor's orders. And, I think it's time for all of us to get back to work ASAP. And it's time to start fixing our economy. And, so I promise you that, Dave, that I'll open up as quickly as possible. And we all have to be adults about it and remember that this deadly disease is still out there. And we're trying to coexist with this deadly disease and provide for our families. So
That's true. Everyone be safe, wash your
you.
hands. As Karen Callahan says, wash those hands all the time. And Phil, wear your gloves and your mask.
Dave, thank you.
Thank you very much for your.
Thanks for doing this, Dave. Thanks to all the members of the Lakeshore Chamber. It's great to
Thank
talk to you again.
We appreciate it. Goodbye.
Thank you.